Welcome to Your Big Career Move, where your host, Yeshim Nicholson, chats to people about their big career moves, uncovers their motivations, their fears, their successes, and everything in between. Be inspired by their stories, and if you're thinking of making your own big career move, head over to yescareercoaching.com. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Your Big Career Move. I'm Yeshim Nicholson, and today I'm talking to Jono Sumner. And I'm really excited to speak to Jono. I've known Jono, I don't know, probably 20 or more years, embarrassingly. And we haven't actually seen each other very much in the last few years. But when I found out what he's doing nowadays, I was like, I need to chat to this guy and I need to get him onto the podcast because he's got a really cool story to tell. And so without further ado, thanks so much, Jono, for joining me today. And like with all my guests, if you wouldn't mind starting, just tell us about where you started. How did your career start?
Yeah, hey, Yash. Yeah, well, look, thanks for having me on. Hopefully this is of some interest to some people. But yeah, I think just by way of starting from the beginning, at school, and I headed to A-level, and I don't think at any point, and then university, of course, I don't think at any point there I really had any idea or clue what it was I wanted to do. I think I often say this to anyone that cares to listen, but to be honest with you, I think leaving school at 16 probably would have suited me. I enjoy the workplace. I wanted to get out there, start learning by doing in a way. So I think, when you're at that age and stage, you follow those steps because it's very much what's expected and the norm, especially with your peers and those around you. But for me, looking back, I think, I'm quite happy to have headed out at 16. Obviously, not knocking the benefit on the application form to having a bit of a education behind you. So I left university and I stumbled into an area of finance in the operations side of things. I think I always knew I wanted to head towards the finance side of things. And
what was it about the finance that attracted you? Can you remember?
Yeah, I enjoy numbers. I like that side of things. I think, to be honest, I don't remember at the time thinking about it in the context of money and earnings. I don't remember that. I'm sure, to be honest, I'm sure that played a part in it. But I felt like, again, with my comfort with numbers, a sort of enjoyment of finance to a degree, it just seemed like an obvious natural fit. Natural fit, obvious fit. I'm not sure how natural it was. And it's interesting I say that actually because I think in hindsight, I think there are other careers that I'd probably been better suited to actually. But anyway, that's what I thought back in when I was 20 odd. So sort of stumbled into something very much a backdoor way. A friend of mine was temping somewhere, and I asked if they needed any more help as I was just coming towards the end. I did a master's, and as I was coming towards the end of that, I asked them if they needed any help, and I sort of managed to get in that way. And then what was a temporary position became a permanent position. So I started that in the operations side of things, and then I became permanent, and then I moved internally to a few other things.
Is it everything you hoped it would be?
I say I just at that age and stage, I don't think I gave it too much thought. I don't think I think it's probably true of many. I don't think my early 20s, a career just wasn't what I was thinking. I enjoyed the notion of heading to work, of doing something that I to a degree found interesting or that ticked some of the boxes of things I'd be looking for in a working day. I love the fact that I was still living at home at the beginning, of course, and I got paid, and then it was all about the evenings and weekends. So sort of in a very typical way, I don't think I gave it too much thought. So I enjoyed that, and I very much when I made the move internally, and I think that was one of those. If you were to ever look back look at your life and think what were some of the key moments, I think applying the job that I applied for internally and got, I think that was one of those moments because it was a real shift, a completely different area and department within where I was working, and that was one of those big moments. I somehow managed to get the job. I don't know quite how that happened, but I managed to get through there, and so continued to do that, and then within that industry and space, I probably started in operations for a couple of years. I was there for another 2.5, 3 years, and then I moved to another company completely, still in finance. And I did that for 2.5, 3 years over the financial crash, which was quite an interesting time to be in that world and space and to be learning stuff. And then, so I did that. And then So that took me, I left there in 2010, and jumping back a bit, in 2005 or 2004, 2005, my brother and my dad set up a family business, which was an extension of what had been my dad's career for 30 odd years. Very niche. It's in chemical distribution, which makes it sound like we're drug dealers, but we nothing along those lines.
All legal stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So no, it was. I mean, they were distributors of products that go into personal care products. So you use a bottle of shampoo; it's got a list of ingredients. We were distributors of those individual ingredients.
Okay.
So that was his background and story. So they started out in 2005, and in 2010, I think it was the reason that the conversation was accelerated was my dad was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's relatively young, at the age of 59, and so obviously him continuing to work within that business was sort of becoming increasingly challenging, or not possible, or not viable. And my brother and I had always been chatting about it over the years, and I guess the ridiculousness of this was we had a conversation. I think we went out for beers, and we had a conversation, and it lasted a minute, and he said, come on, let's do it. Let's give it a go. You come on board. And so I was like, okay. And I just didn't give it. I didn't give it any. I guess I just didn't give it any great thought. So I guess, and maybe if I had given it too much thought, I could have sort of talked myself out of it. But
do you think it was something that was sort of in the back of your mind anyway, or was it completely out of the blue?
Certainly wasn't completely out of the blue. It honestly wasn't something my brother and I had spoken about in length. But I think to your point, it was that something we both knew was there, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in the nicest sense, like my dad and I, as much as we loved each other, there was an occasional butting of heads, I'd say. Right. So someone would have killed someone in the nicest sense at some point. But I think it was sort of always there as a possibility. And I think, speaking very open and honestly, I think the other thing that was on my mind is I'd reached a point where I think I was okay at what I did, but I was not good at it. I wasn't great. I wasn't crazily driven. I wasn't particularly skilled. I'm not saying it's all about drive. There's a skill element in it.
Sure.
And I think I had probably reached, or probably, if I'm honest with myself, probably unjustifiably exceeded that ceiling of my ability within that space, considering my skill set and my appetite and my business maturity and all this. I wouldn't say I rose through, in the nice sense, I didn't rise through ranks in so much as, the moves that I made, the big ones. So technically, I don't think I never got promoted in that sense or that term. Right. But because when I left one bank to go to another, that was a completely new era. I was only there 2.5 years. And then when I moved to another company, that move was to a far smaller, very flat structure, far smaller team. So I was making these moves. I say making these moves, but these moves were happening to me in the nicest sense. So, but I think for me, that was part of the motivation. There was a realization there that, and I don't think I thought at the time, but in hindsight, you think about it. But I guess that would have been my life for many, many years to come. And again, not that this was a reason for the move, but in hindsight, you think, okay. And I think what I'm definitely keen to emphasize is, I think sometimes when you get people, you listen to, I'm not saying yours, yes, but you listen to many podcasts and things, and people often, I don't know, it feels a bit trendy or whatever, but people slam the careers or the professions they had beforehand, or their way of living beforehand. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Like, it suited me. I worked, I went into work, I did my thing. The evenings were my own, and the weekends were my own, and obviously I travel, work, and do some bits and pieces. But I have not a bad word to say about it in the space that I was in. So no, but I made that move, and I think the most important thing, though, besides that, was the pull of working with my brother. We love each other very much and get on very well, which is fantastic. And then building a business, and I felt that I felt I could add some value in some shape. And so that was the move to that. So we were, I guess it's a very long introduction, obviously, background of my career, but we did that, and then we were lucky enough to sell the business in 2016. So after 6 years, and obviously a lot happened in those 6 years to enable us to take that position. And then and then so did that, and then I took whatever, a year and a half out or so, just to I guess enjoy not working. And then in 2018, joined up with my brother again, but also my best mate from school, came back to start Life Jacket, which is where we are now, which is we launched, I guess just under 5 years ago.
Amazing. And Life Jacket is a brand of skin protection, because it's not just sun cream, right? It's sun
so
cream
we do all things skin protection. So for us as a business, we started off as a for men brand because of the statistic that men are twice as likely as women to die from skin cancer, and there's no reason for this. There's no biological reason. It's simply habit and behavior. But most notably, what struck us was that the market and what was available there didn't speak to men. It didn't resonate with them. It didn't think about their preferences and what they do or don't like. And so we started off with that, but really over the years we've moved away from being so explicitly for men, and we are very much for everyone. The statistic remains that skin cancer mortality has doubled. Skin cancer rates have doubled in the last 20 years, and they're forecast to double again in the next 20. So we really are a mission-led brand. We're trying to do something positive and constructive. We're trying to the big thing for us is, as well as our products, which we're extremely proud of and put a lot of work into, that we know that we're not going to achieve our mission of halting the increase in skin cancer unless we commit as much resource and effort and energy as we do to our products to raising awareness of the risks of skin damage, and also of helping people understand the facts and science when it comes to their skin. We do a lot of stuff with that. So we're partnered with the fantastic guys over at Melanoma UK, the UK's leading melanoma charity. But we do loads by way of awareness raising, absolutely loads. And as it happens, May now, which we're in the middle of, is Skin Cancer Awareness Month, so we do a lot on that. We do a lot of talks. We give a lot of talks and presentations and host Q&A sessions with a load of groups and organisations in construction, water sports, schools, whatever it is, to get people thinking about their skin. So we are very much led by that passion and that mission.
I love that. And where did the idea come from?
It was all so Billy, so that's the mate of mine. So he, very successful career. He started off in banking, and then he moved in-house with a big drinks company. He was doing that. But the sort of backstory, and I guess a slightly personal element to it, was in our early 30s, we knew of 4 of our friends were all diagnosed with different forms of cancer, actually. And it's one of those things where, certainly speaking for men or guys alone, sort of when and quite rightly, in your late 20s, early 30s, you feel you're indestructible. Things would happen to you. It's just taking the world by storm, which is as it should be. You should be carefree, in my opinion, at that age and stage. And it's just cancer could be quite indiscriminate. Certainly could be quite indiscriminate. And so we sort of went that route. I mean, I was diagnosed myself with cancer in 2014.
Oh gosh, actually, I didn't know that.
Right,
really sorry to hear that. Wow.
No. It's thank you. No, it was just it was just one of those things. But I mean, all absolutely fine and dandy now. And it was all a pretty quick process to deal with. And so anyway, but that was and so Bill was Billy, the guy. He loves his health and looking after yourself. And as myself and other mates of ours were sort of going through this, he was always curious and interested in reading about the various diagnoses and the forms of cancer they had, and as it happens, none of them were skin cancer. But he stumbled across this statistic about men and skin cancer, and started looking around trying to understand why. And there's no good explanation for it other than what we touched on earlier. So that was it, and so that was his start. So he started thinking about it and started fleshing it out whilst sort of in his mind. And then he made he reached the point and he made the brave decision to sort of say, oh, do you know what? This is something I actually want to do and commit to. And so the timing was great with that, and with the fact that Rob and I were sort of, I said a loose end, but had sort of made sold our family business, and we'd moved on from that. So that was the sort of start point, was that, and we were all sort of in, and we thought, let's give it a go.
So when you took your career break, let's say you took a year and a half out, what was going through your mind at that point? Or were you just too much, were you just too busy having too much fun? Or were you during that time exploring different things that you might do? Or what was the process for then? Because it sounded like then this opportunity almost landed on your lap, which is very nice.
Yeah, it did. And, I think we were chatting a bit beforehand, Yash, about this, in so much as I'd say it myself, it's sort of, I wouldn't classify myself as a lot of these career moves I've had, it's not where I've been itching or trying to focus on something or make that next step or build a career, right? So some of these things, that sort of opportunities seem to have presented themselves, some more complete than others, and I've sort of rolled with them. So yeah, but I think in that year and a half off, I think I enjoyed it. I think that was the first thing. So we did some bits and pieces, and my wife and I, or my now wife and I, headed. We got married, but we headed to the US for 3 months just to enjoy that, just take some time out, and have took some time out from her work. She's a structural engineer, so we sort of did that and stuff, and I did some bits and pieces, but nothing too crazy. I think the one thing that always strikes me, and I would say this to anyone of a job, I reckon, but certainly anyone that's sort of I only experienced it as someone that had been owning a business or a family business, was I remember waking up the day after. So we sold and we stayed on for a bit to help with the transition and the handover. And that day ended on, as it happens, it was the 31st of December, the end of the calendar year. That was the last day, which was also the end of our financial year. And I remember waking up on January the 1st, and you realise how much, I guess, it sounds negative, but how much stress or worry you've built up and you constantly carrying. Because I woke up and I immediately was in that frame of mind of thinking about stuff of, I've got this, I've got to get this done, and I don't mean worry or stress necessarily in a negative way, just the reality of thinking about work and thinking about stuff. And you wake up with that, and I was like, that isn't a thing. I don't have to go anywhere today. I'm not accountable to anything at all. And it took a good, I had that for a month or two. I had that. I wake up in the morning and you realize I was waking up with this anxiety, and I don't want to overstate it. It's not a deep anxiety or a panic, but it's just your mind's ticking over. And yeah, and that's the thing that always struck me. And so suddenly you get to this point, you're like, oh, fantastic, and you like skip out of bed, and you've got literally not a worry or care in the world. It's quite a rare moment, and an absolutely great one as well.
Yeah, nice. Does that become boring after a year and a half or not?
Well, it becomes the norm. So like with anything that we do, a lot of things become the norm, and that just becomes the benchmark from which you're the start point from anything. I think, and I think what was interesting actually was, or to confirm what I said earlier, was over that year and a half, it took something being presented to me for me to make that move. Do you mean like I wasn't? And in general, eventually I would have had to do something. Of course, I'd have had to find that something. But having originally left, what I was in, which was a profession with skill sets, and you'd reapply for a job. Obviously, when you move into the space of a family business, it becomes your CV is a bit different. There isn't an obvious next step in that space. Obviously, you could look to return to finance in some capacity. I mean, obviously, I've been out of the game for years, but in some way or sense, you have that. But it's in some ways, it's a less obviously transferable skill set in terms of what do I do next. Yeah. So yes, and I think there were moments where I was like, okay, I say bored, but I'm kind of okay. I should be doing something, what have you. But at the same time, I think the other reality is where I've become quite spoiled, and this is more a testament to the family businesses. When it's your own thing, you have the luxury of coming and going as you please, and you're not accountable to anyone, which is quite, in many ways, is quite nice. But it is quite rare. So the notion to me then of signing up to something where I had to be somewhere at certain times and or be accountable to people, I was like, I quite like doing what I want when I want for myself. So which is obviously a very spoiled or fortunate position to try and find. But
but actually quite normal. I think obviously I meet a lot of people who work for themselves now, and that's the one thing a lot of them say, is that they feel like they're totally unemployable now, from the point of view, like exactly like you said, that you've got this really varied skill set that is transferable, but possibly doesn't feel like it's transferable. But also you've got so used to working the hours that suit you. Some people just prefer to work 3 till 5 in the morning or whatever crazy hours they do. And I think the thought of going back into your sort of, your 9 to 5 typical job is quite daunting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it really
certainly less palatable.
Yeah. You come across as somebody who has a lot of self-belief, who is obviously open to opportunities and grabbing things by both hands. What is it that you've learned about yourself over the last few years?
I guess it's a combination of what I've learned, what I'm not, and therefore what I am, or what I am and therefore what I'm not.
Yeah.
Kind of that way around. But it's interesting. So I've worked now for years with my brother. So since 2010, and with the family business, and now this, and a couple other things we sort of messed around with. But what I know what I'm not, and again, I don't mean to say I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm not a number one, if you know what I mean. That isn't who I am. I think where I'm useful, or I think can make the greatest relative contribution is I think I'm good as that number 2 or that number 3. So the idea or the bravery might not necessarily be mine.
Yeah.
But if involved, a kind of sort of as it often is with any business that starts, or small business, or as it's growing, the reality is it's a jack of all, master of none. There can be no airs or graces. It's all hands on deck. Everyone's doing everything. You learn so much about such random things that you have to enable the business to go, regardless of what you do. Obviously, if you're selling something, okay, well, these are my customers and this is the product. But beyond that, it's everything that goes around it. Import, export, tax, all of this kind of stuff, print, branding, marketing, design, all these kind of things. Again, not that I get involved in the marketing side, but you sort of have to do certain things.
Sure.
So I think sort of, all hands on deck, getting stuff done, just being prepared to throw yourself at everything and anything that needs to happen. Obviously my background, I have some, and the way I think, I'm quite operationally minded. So I'm quite logical in that sense. So, movement, manufacturing, all this kind of stuff, that suits me quite well. I'm not creative at all. I'm certainly not a creative person. I'm kept well away. I'm not allowed anywhere near that side of the business.
I was about to compliment you on your social media. I won't do that then.
No,
you're not going to take any credit for it.
You should, and I agree with you, and rightly so. But that's certainly the work of Billy and of the guys we work with. Fridays at 9, the agency we work with as well. They're a great bunch. So no, it's just all of that. So yeah, I guess it's, in terms of what I learned about myself. It's I guess you start to, whilst not wanting to limit yourself by what you've always done or historically done, or what you think you can do, because invariably we're often capable of things beyond that comfort zone, what we think. Yeah. You find your niche, and I think the interesting thing I find actually is when it's the nature of your own business, there are more. It will have a demand of more than you can ever put in. If you want to work 24 hours a day, there's 24 hours a day of work. It will never ever end. And I think there's a reality where you find yourself sometimes drawn to the things that you either enjoy the most or are most comfortable with, which by the way, doesn't always align with what the business actually needs the most at that moment in time. Like there can be a tendency to retreat into a comfort zone of stuff. Sure. So you've always, as a business, got to be very clear about what the absolute priority is. But you'll always, I think as humans, there's always a tendency to slide towards the things that we feel strongest in, or most comfortable with, or most confident. But yeah, it's all of that kind of stuff. So it sort of confirms what you think and confirms what you aren't, but also what you are.
So there's 3 of you running the business. Did you from day one assign roles to each other or to yourselves?
It was just obvious.
Right.
Okay. So it was always going to be the case where I would be, that operational side, some of the numbers, and the customer interaction. I quite enjoy speaking to people. I'm always quite happy with that. So all that customer facing side of stuff. Bill has a fantastic eye for detail and brand and design, and not to underrate, but also strategy in a bigger sense. So Bill was always very much going to be that side of things, and Rob, my brother, by virtue of his background, he's the formulatory brains behind a lot of it. So when it comes to product, NPD, development, compliance, regulatory testing, and that side of things, that's very much his strength.
Right.
What we need. And then, of course, those are the obvious areas for us. And then on top of that, then the three of us, as a sort of, combined or as a committee, tackle the rest of it and the bigger picture stuff of what it is we're trying to do and achieve. So, well, I think on the one hand, we're very lucky that we do seem to have quite individual and yet complementary skill sets and interests, but that's not to say that we cover all bases of the business, right? I think the rest of the stuff we try to get to it as best we can, but for sure, we're by no means the complete package.
What does the future look like? Is this something that you think you'll do until the day you die, or have you got plans to sell the business at some point, or what's the vision?
Well, genuinely, for us as a brand, our mission is to halt the increase of skin cancer. That's the absolute focus. And so, the more people that we get that message to, and the more people, obviously we love it if people, our priority is getting people to look after their skin.
Sure.
And of, genuinely, whether or not that's the end point of that is them using our product or another, as long as we're getting more people doing the right thing to their skin, we're happy. But there's a commercial reality. We need to sell enough to be able to keep the lights on and stuff, of course. But that really is our mission. So getting that message out there. And I think, we would love to, we are not, as a business, we're not looking to make, loads and loads of money in terms of, massive sales and huge amounts of profit. We'd like to get to the point where, the profit we're making is plowed back in to either make the products more accessible or to do more by way of education and raising awareness. So that's that. So we're just sort of rolling with it. I mean, we don't have a defined exit strategy. That's not something that we have at the moment. It's one of those things where if you achieve one thing as a business, that simultaneously makes it appealing to others, maybe. But that isn't our focus right now. We're just trying to, because we are quite in top, we represent the brand and we try to put ourselves out there a bit. Could probably do better at that. It's that. So we don't, rambling answer here. We don't have an exit strategy per se. We're just going with this. And I think the key thing is, are we making progress, however we define progress? And we are. So as long as we're seeing ourselves continuing to grow, then sort of that's a reason to keep doing it.
Yeah, love it. What do you love most about what you're doing now? Do you love any of it?
No, it's good to be working. It's very lucky and good to be working with essentially my two of my best mates. So that's really good when we do that. I think again, I was mentioning to you just before we sort of jumped on this, but I think what we could definitely do a better job of is at times standing back and recognizing and maybe giving us a very, very, very small pat on the back for what we've achieved. I think there's a great tendency with these things. You get swept up in it, and you might reach certain milestones which are major for yourself, and you sort of just pass through them without thinking, if you'd offered me this a year ago or 2 years ago or however long ago, that would be fantastic. So I think we could be a bit better at sort of saying well done to ourselves a bit, but at the same time it is a very challenging space. We're up against guys with some pretty big budgets, the big major brands who just blow us out of the water. So it will always be a fight and a battle for us to get out there and be seen. And that's the reality of being in this type of space.
But it'd be boring if there wasn't a challenge, wouldn't it?
I mean, there are moments where I wish it wasn't quite so much of a challenge. I won't lie, but of course, that's if there wasn't, everyone would be doing it. That's
also true.
So it is those wins of stuff and doing something well, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but genuinely, the biggest kick I and I think I speak to those we get is by virtue of the area we're in, which is UV protection, and by virtue of the worst end of the spectrum of UV damage, which is skin cancer, unfortunately, and melanoma. And because of that, in the community we often end up speaking to, and again, courtesy of Melanoma UK, we just, from time to time, we just get some amazing comments from people who have genuinely, whose lives have been impacted by skin cancer in some capacity, be it themselves personally or a friend, family member, or a loved one. And, you get these moments and these comments, and it's just fantastic. We're talking about people who said, look, I've been afraid to leave the house or get out of the house or expose myself to sun or go on holiday, like all of these, genuinely all of these things. And, they say, but your products have given me the confidence to do that and do more. Now, the reality, being very, very honest, the reality is that would have been true of any product that they try and use, but whatever it is, something about us has given them that confidence.
To them.
Take that step, and it's not to knock it at all. We're all, different things resonate with all of us differently.
Yeah, for sure.
So stuff like that really is a kick, and it is that it sharpens your mind as to why you're doing, and you're doing it so that hopefully you get fewer and fewer people say that, because fewer and fewer people have to go through that, because skin cancer is 90% preventable. It's the most preventable cancer. And so, that's certainly a big part of our message. So it is the one that is most in our control as humans to avoid.
Well, having lived in Australia, where, people in Australia are fanatical, I think is the right word, about protecting themselves from the sun for good reason.
Slip,
slap. That's the one. Yeah. So, in fact, I think they've gone almost to the extreme. I heard the other day that a lot of Australians have vitamin D deficiency, which you wouldn't believe in a country like that has sunlight almost every day of the year.
But it's a big, it's an interesting, in our, not to digress too much, in what we do in our space, it's a big part of our challenge is cultural. We've all done it. We've all been guilty of it. Like, we've all gone away and someone comes back from holiday, and go, oh, you look healthy, you look well. And it's the total opposite. If I could say one thing to anyone that's, to the people listening, is that there is no such thing as a healthy tan. It's just damage. And so, it's interesting culturally, and obviously I generalize here, but there is very much a Western culture of a tan is a desirable thing. For whatever reason, we think it's a sign of good health, or, sexier, we prefer that color, but it's all obviously a construct of how we've been marketed and what we've been led to believe. But what you also get in, large parts of Asia, and certainly parts of Africa as well, increasingly, is it's desirable to have fairer skin. And the comparison I give is, in Asia and parts of Africa, it is not uncommon for people to use bleaching products to lighten their skin. And I'll say this to someone else, I'll say, so people bleach their skin, and I'll go, that is insane. But why is it any different? Turning your skin a darker color. It's a similar concept. They're both damaged and both extreme. It's just, so a big part of our challenge is overcoming that cultural thing of a tan being desirable. And it's like we have no opinion about what color people want to be. Our only advice would be, if you want to have a tan, fake it. So don't get it by virtue of the sun. Never use sunbeds; they're horrific. But use there are loads of sprays, mousses, creams you can get now that will afford you a tan appearance. So if you like that, great. But just but fake it.
Yeah, good message. That brings me on to my final question, which is, what does success mean to you now? Obviously, I know you have a little one now. We might have even heard him earlier. I don't know. There was something in the background. No, that's totally fine. We're all real human beings with real lives going on in the background. So that was fine. Him. He just wanted to be part of this, didn't he?
Yeah.
But has that changed how you view success, or what is your definition nowadays?
Yeah, I don't know really. It's it's not something I ever sort of give great thought to. I think it is genuinely being happy, and I think I say that with the caveat that, of course, the health and safety and well-being of my family and friends precedes everything, of course. And I think the way success for me now would be making the most of the very fortunate position I find myself in for whatever reason, which is a happy, loving family, running a business, working with friends, all this, that, and the other. And it would be a shame to look back in years to come and say, oh, do you know what? I could have done whatever I wanted, or I had this luxury or this freedom, or I had these opportunities, and I didn't make the most of it. I wasn't happy with it. So I think success for me isn't money side of things. Obviously, look, let's be honest, you need an element of financial security, and that brings great peace of mind. So that's certainly something. But yeah, it's just there. And I think in the working sense, we would love to see Life Jacket continue to grow and be a success, and be well received. But yeah, be happy and then just enjoying life and just doing the things that make you happy. And as long as I keep smiling and laughing, then that's good enough for me.
That sounds like a great definition of success to me. I think smiling and laughing all the way.
Yes, yeah. As long as others around me aren't crying as I'm doing it, then that's about okay.
I think that's good. I interviewed somebody recently, and his advice was to smile with your heart, and it's so cheesy, but I bloody love it. It's so nice. I think
put it on a pillow.
Put it on a pillow, indeed. Yeah, I'll cross stitch that into a pillow later. But it's been such a pleasure to chat to you. I've just loved hearing your story, and I'll put the link to your website in the show notes. So if anybody would like to check out your products, then they can. And
sorry, this is very cheeky, but I always say is if anyone has any questions about anything involved, forget our products and stuff. Any questions about skin, health, safety, we work with Melanoma UK. Anyone's got a worry, they want to be direct, all of that stuff, we genuinely we reply to everything ourselves. It's all us. So by all means, do please get in touch. We're happy to listen and hear.
Brilliant. I love it. I mean, it's a term that gets used a lot nowadays, but I mean, you really seem like a very purpose-driven business, and without sounding over dramatic about it, I think we need more businesses like that. We need more businesses that are about more than the bottom line at the end of the day. We need businesses that are thinking about the environment and society and our health and our well-being, and the more purpose-led businesses that are out there, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But
as long as they're not in skin protection, I'm all for that as well.
We'll make sure that doesn't happen. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much again, Jono. It's been a real pleasure.
No, thanks for having me. Yes, cheers.
If you know someone who would enjoy this podcast, do share it with them and subscribe now so you never miss an episode.